What if the key to really getting the Bible isn't just about reading it more, but reading it, well, completely differently? Today, we're going to dive into how to see Scripture not with our modern eyes, but through the eyes of the people who actually wrote it in their ancient world.
You ever been there? You're reading the Bible and you just kind of stop and think, what on earth is going on here? Some passages can feel so confusing or disconnected or honestly just plain weird. It's a super common experience, and it turns out there's a really good reason for it, which is exactly what we're going to unpack.
And this brings us to a strange paradox we live in. We have more access to information than ever before. Ancient languages, archaeology, historical data, it's all at our fingertips. But you'd think all that access would lead to more clarity, right? Yet for a lot of us, the Bible can feel even more disconnected from our world. So what gives?
Well, it really boils down to two totally different ways of approaching the text. On one side, you have our typical modern reading, which uses what we can call filters. It's like we're reading through these invisible lenses we don't even know we're wearing. The other way is what we're calling a mosaic approach, letting the text itself build its own picture, piece by piece, on its own terms.
So let's dig into these filters for a second. The thing is, every single one of us reads through them. They're the assumptions we pick up from our culture, our education, and our church traditions. Now, they're not automatically bad, they help us make sense of the world. But when you bring them to an ancient text, they can become a huge problem.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. The real danger with these filters is that you can't see them. We completely mistake our own interpretation, our own framework, for what the text is actually saying. We think we're just reading the Bible, but really, we're reading what our system allows the Bible to say.
So what do these filters even look like? Well, here are a few of the big ones. We've got our modern cultural assumptions about how the world works, Then there's post-Enlightenment thinking, which can make us a little skeptical of anything supernatural. And of course, there are our specific denominational traditions, or these big theological systems that were built centuries after the Bible was even written.
And here's why that's such a big deal. When we lean on these filters, the authority subtly shifts. Instead of letting the biblical text challenge and shape our thinking, we end up using our pre-built system to control the text. We're listening more to our framework than to Scripture itself.
Okay, so if filters are the problem, what's the solution? A really beautiful way to think about it is to see the Bible not as something to be filtered, but as a giant mosaic. We've got all these different, colorful pieces, and our job is to step back and see how they fit together to create one stunning picture.
So mosaic-based reading just means that every single passage gets to have its say. We don't toss out the weird or difficult pieces. Nope, we trust that each one, even the strange ones, adds something essential to the bigger picture, a picture that's grounded in their ancient world, not our modern one.
So how does this actually work? Well, it's really a three-step dance. First, you do the hard but rewarding work of putting a passage back in its original home, its original context. Second, you just let it speak for itself, without trying to jam it into a neat little theological box you already have. And third, you just have to be patient and let the big, coherent picture emerge as all those little pieces find their place.
Now, I know this all sounds great in theory, but let's be real, it's not easy. Shifting our entire perspective is hard work, and there are some very real roadblocks that get in the way of recovering this ancient worldview.
There are three really big ones. First, we have a habit of confusing later church history with the Bible's actual context. Second, our modern world is just kind of uncomfortable with the Bible's constant talk of a supernatural, unseen realm. And third, we all do it. We tend to skip over, explain away, or just flat out ignore the truly weird passages.
Let's take a famous example of one of these weird parts. Genesis chapter 6. The one that talks about the sons of God having kids with human women, and the result is this race of giants called the Nephilim. Most of the time, we just kind of brush past this, say it's an allegory, or write it off as some strange myth.
But what if we're asking the wrong question? What if this text isn't a problem we need to solve, but actually a clue? Maybe passages like this are interpretive anchors. Maybe they hold the key to understanding the Bible's much bigger story about a cosmic rebellion and a battle for spiritual authority.
And that brings us to the payoff. Because when you start taking these passages seriously, when you start reading the Bible through this ancient lens, it doesn't just tweak a few minor interpretations. Oh no, it changes everything. Just look at this comparison. With our modern filter, sin is mostly a personal, moral slip-up. But in the ancient worldview, it's about joining a cosmic rebellion against God, Worship isn't just a private feeling, it's a public declaration of allegiance in a spiritual war. And faith? It's way more than an internal belief, it's an act of cosmic defiance. The stakes get so much higher. This perspective also gives us this incredibly rich, profound context for what Christ accomplished. It's not just about a personal transaction for my sins. It's about a decisive, cosmic victory that completely reordered all authority in heaven and on earth, defeating those hostile spiritual powers.
And this is so important. Recovering this worldview isn't just an academic game for scholars. It's meant to completely transform how Scripture works in our actual lives. It turns the Bible from a rulebook or a theology textbook into a dynamic guide for how to live faithfully in the world God made.
At the end of the day, this approach turns the Bible into something incredibly powerful. It becomes a summons to participate in God's rule within a contested cosmos. It's a direct invitation to join in what God is doing, right here, right now, to reclaim and restore His world.
So I'll just leave you with this to chew on. What if taking the Bible on its own ancient terms doesn't make it more distant and irrelevant? What if it actually reveals that it is far more alive, way more coherent, and infinitely more profound than we ever imagined?